Hi, my name is Shallow, and thank you for joining us again for the WeConnect Wednesday video series. Last week we discussed the importance of being a good listener. Today we're going to be talking about the stereotypes and the role they play in how we connect with others. But first, let's join our friends at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute.
It's important that we analyze the perception of African Americans in the minds of white people. And before we dive into that, I think there's a very important quote you should hear. So the great French writer and philosopher Voltaire once said that if we believe in absurdities, we will commit atrocities. And keep that in mind as we go through this next gallery. So as we all know, throughout history, the media has been very influential in perpetuating stereotypes about certain groups of people. These stereotypes could be about more than, and it could be multiple different groups. The Jewish community has fallen victim to stereotypes, Native Americans have fallen victim, and many others have fallen victim. But right now we're going to be focusing on stereotypes about African Americans. And as times evolved and African Americans got roles in acting, whether it be on stage, in theater, or on television, the people in charge of them, who were predominantly white, forced these actors, these black actors and actresses, to reinforce stereotypes about their own race. And the majority of the time, if not all the time, these stereotypes were extremely negative and had negative connotations. So as we look into this for men and stereotypes, we can see the Samba doll. The Samba doll was a doll. He was a character. He was happy-go-lucky. He was always giddy, dancing around, singing, and they used him to mock African Americans. We can also look at Bert Williams. He was an actor who was 15/16 white, but he identified as black, so he played the role as black men in films and in plays. And him, along with many other men who acted, they would perform blackface, they would paint their lips to make them look bigger, and they would slouch over to make themselves appear non-threatening. And this was just so that the white people in the audience would feel more comfortable, and it made the African Americans seem lesser. And so over time, people began to see African Americans as lesser, and obviously you can see the development of the stereotype. Furthermore, we have Jim Crow. Jim Crow was a character developed by Thomas Rice in the 1800s. And Jim Crow, he had a song called Jumping Jim Crow, and it was performed by white actors who performed blackface, and they would jump around dancing, hoop holler, and all this just to degrade African American culture and make fun of them. And you can see Jim Crow, we recognize that name because that's the same name given to the ordinances of segregation in the South 100 years later. So let's shift gears again and focus back on women and with stereotypes of African American women. So right here on our left we have Mandy, or Aunt Jemima as most of us know her. And we've seen that on the news recently, we understand the controversy, but it's important to look deeper into this. So Mandy was a very stoic figure. She was very large, fat, she always had a grin on her face. So remember the grin. But let's look a little deeper here. She always has her hair covered, she never wears makeup to highlight her feminine qualities, and she's always dressed as a servant. And they did this for one specific reason. They wanted her to look like the same slaves that would feed and cook for the plantation owner and his family back before slavery was abolished. And it's important to understand that this is just a continuation of the stereotype we mentioned earlier, just to convince people that African Americans were inferior to white people, which is wrong. And it's important to realize that as we continue, you'll see that stereotype that people will have to break. But also, what's arguably more important to realize is that Mandy is always smiling. Just as the Samba doll is always smiling, he's giddy, Bert Williams smiles, and this is for one reason. Not only did white people perpetuate the stereotype that African Americans were inferior, but they always showed them smiling to make it seem like they were better off because of it, that they were happy that they were below the standard of living for white people, which is plain wrong. And it's important to understand that these are the same stereotypes that African Americans are going to have to strive to break. They're going to have to break these stereotypes in the name of equality, because they can get all the court cases they want. They can fight for equality in the courtroom, and to be equal under the eyes of law is very important, but it's just important to be equal under the eyes of man. And so breaking these stereotypes is very important.
So far, we've had the opportunity to explore our identities and how they relate to the world around us, as well as learning new skills that will help us communicate and learn about others. Today, we want you to challenge yourself and think about the assumptions that you make about other people. Humans have a natural tendency to place people and things into categories. This process is called generalization, and this is one of the many ways people are trying to make sense of a complex world. Generalization becomes a problem when we use it to describe a person or a group of people based on just our own experiences or beliefs without having any proof or facts. It's important for us to be able to challenge any generalizations made about people because we can easily fall into the trap of stereotyping. A stereotype is overly simplified judgment or bias regarding a person or group of people. Stereotyping can lead to prejudice, which is an unjustified opinion, usually negative, directed towards an individual or group of people. Prejudice can lead to discrimination, which is an unfair treatment of a person or a group based on prejudice, can be a very slippery slope when we start making generalizations and stereotypes about others. Using the skills we have discussed in previous sessions, like suspending judgment, reframing, and listening, can help us rise above stereotypes and connect with others. Have you ever been stereotyped or discriminated against? How did it make you feel? Share your experience in the comments. Thank you for joining us and see you next time.